The door's jammed.
Cut through. We don't have much time.
There are certain sounds in gaming that immediately tell you that things are about to go very, very wrong. In some games, it's Latin music right after an autosave. In Aliens Fireteam Elite 2, it's the beep of a motion tracker. And somewhere in a dark hallway, the unmistakable sound of a Xenomorph crawling through a ventilation shaft. Aliens Fireteam Elite 2 launches August 25th, and we recently had an opportunity to spend some time with the game. And Marines, I think we're going back on a bug hunt. Cold Iron Studios and Daybreak Games aren't simply making another Aliens Fireteam Elite. From what we've played so far, this feels like a studio that looked at what worked in the first game, kept the foundation intact, and then started turning knobs until they hit 11. And one of the biggest reasons it works is something incredibly important to the Alien franchise: pacing. Some of our favorite moments weren't actually the big firefights. They were the moments immediately before them. You're moving through a facility with your fire team, nothing's happening. And that's exactly the problem. You're checking corners, watching ceilings, looking at vents, listening for movement. And every few seconds you're wondering whether something is about to come flying out of the wall. Then suddenly the game flips the switch. What was a quiet corridor becomes an evolving firefight as xenomorphs start pouring into your position. The transition between tension and chaos feels excellent. The official description talks about enemies stalking corridors, ambushing from the shadows, and attacking in overwhelming numbers, and honestly, that's a pretty accurate description of what we experienced. 1 minute you're clearing a hallway, and the next minute, everyone is shooting. And yelling. Mostly yelling. A huge part of why those moments work is the sound design. The weapons sound fantastic. Even when you're using futuristic weapons that obviously don't exist, they still somehow sound the way you expect military hardware in the Alien universe to sound. There's weight behind them. There's impact. And then you add the sound of the xenomorphs. You hear the movement around you. You hear them crawling through the ships. You hear them screeching during a fight. It constantly reinforces that feeling that you're surrounded by something that is hunting you just as much as you're hunting it. And the music might be even more important. During exploration, it creates this suffocating atmosphere where you're always waiting for something terrible to happen. Then the combat starts, and the soundtrack ramps up right alongside it. Suddenly, that slow tension becomes adrenaline-fueled chaos. It provides that extra punch during firefights and makes those encounters feel much larger than just another room full of enemies. When you combine the sound, lighting, environmental design, and music, the atmosphere really starts to capture that military science fiction horror that makes this franchise special. The part where Aliens Fireteam Elite 2 really started clicking for us was the squad gameplay. The sequel increases the fire team from 3 Marines to 4, with expanded class mechanics designed around coordination and squad composition, and fighting alongside your crew against an onslaught of Xenos feels epic in all the right ways. You aren't simply standing in one location dumping ammunition down a hallway, although you can. You're identifying avenues of approach, you're deciding whether your squad should establish itself, recognizing choke points covering fields of fire. You're reacting when enemies suddenly start attacking from somewhere you weren't expecting, like your 6, and you're constantly adapting because the battlefield can shift on a dime. That part really connected with our team. There's something about coordinating with other players, communicating under pressure, and adapting when the situation goes sideways that evokes the feeling of a real firefight. Obviously, we're talking about fictional space monsters here, but, the communication, the chaos, the moment when somebody's plan immediately falls apart and everyone has to figure it out, that feels strangely familiar. And that is where we think our audience is going to have a lot of fun with this game. Players who enjoyed the skill and build system from the original Aliens Fireteam Elite should feel very comfortable here. There's still also considerably more room to experiment. The sequel features 5 classes with significant upgrades, alongside a new specialist endgame class that allows players to mix and match major and minor abilities from the other available classes. And that opens up some really interesting possibilities. Instead of just asking, what class am I, you start asking, what does my fire team need? And that's a much more interesting question in a cooperative shooter. Weapons have also received deeper customization through fire modes, augments, and weapon traits, giving players considerably more control over how their arsenal behaves. Between your marine, weapons, abilities, and upgrades, there's a lot to chase. And that progression loop already has us wondering what some late in-game builds will look like once the community gets their hands on the game. One of our biggest questions now is what happens when we finish the story. Aliens Fireteam Elite 2 launches with dedicated horde maps featuring increasingly difficult waves and progressively better rewards, which sounds exactly like the kind of mode where coordinated fire teams are going to spend a ridiculous amount of time trying to perfect builds and strategies. And that's where we're interested, because we want to see the builds, we want to see the difficulty ramp up, we want to see the community start discovering strategies that maybe the developers didn't think about. We want to see those moments where 4 players are desperately trying to survive just one more wave, and we have no ammunition and everything's just completely fallen apart. Because if the endgame can capture the intensity we've already experienced during these early missions, there could be a lot of game here. Our time with Aliens Fireteam Elite 2 left us wanting more. That's probably the simplest way I can put it. The pacing between exploration and combat feels excellent. The weapons sound powerful. The Xenomorphs sound horrifying. The soundtrack knows exactly when to make you uncomfortable and exactly when to crank everything up to 11. The squad mechanics make coordinated firefights feel great and real. And the additional customization appears to be taking the progression system from the original game and giving players considerably more freedom to make their marine their own. Most importantly, the game really understands the fantasy. You're not some unstoppable hero, you're a colonial marine standing alongside 3 other marines while an unreasonable amount of bugs are trying to eat you. And that makes Aliens Fireteam Elite 2 exactly the kind of co-op shooter we were hoping for. We want to see where the story takes us, and we definitely want to find out just how legendary the endgame can become. And thankfully, we don't have much longer to wait. Aliens Fireteam Elite 2 launches August 25th on Steam, Epic Game Store, Xbox, and PlayStation with cross-platform support. So wishlist it now, get your fire team together, prepare for mission, and we'll see you planetside.
I'm out. Reloading.